A mother's forbidden love would destroy everything she held dear, leaving only regret and devastation in its wake. In a quiet Pennsylvania suburb where perfectly trimmed lawns stretched for blocks and neighbors still brought casseroles to welcome newcomers, one family's story would soon become the kind of tragedy that makes people lock their doors at night. The Thompsons were about to learn that the most dangerous threats don't come from strangers, they come from the choices we make behind closed doors. Sarah Thompson stood at her kitchen window one spring morning in 2023, watching her daughter Lily walk hand in hand with her new boyfriend across their driveway. At 45, Sarah still turned heads at the local grocery store. Her shoulder-length brown hair had only a few strands of gray, and years of working as a nurse had kept her figure trim. As she watched the young couple, she felt a familiar ache in her chest, a mix of pride and something else she couldn't quite name. The boyfriend was Jake Harris, a 24-year-old who had entered their lives just 3 months ago. He worked at a local marketing firm and carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from being handsome and knowing it. All with dark hair and the kind of smile that made people trust him instantly, Jake had charmed everyone in the Thompson household from day one. Tom Thompson had immediately approved of Jake upon their first meeting. As a construction foreman, Tom believed in judging people by their handshake and work ethic. At 47, he had started gaining weight around the middle, and his hairline was retreating, but he still had the strong arms and calloused hands of someone who believed in honest work. Their daughter Lily was 22 and in her final year of studying psychology at the local college. She had Sarah's brown hair and Tom's determined chin, and a smile that could light up a room. When she had brought Jake home for the first time, her eyes had sparkled with that special excitement that only comes with new love. The Thompson house was a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters. It wasn't the biggest house on Cedar Street, but it was well maintained, with flower beds that Sarah tended every spring in a back deck Tom had built himself. Inside, family photos lined the walls: Lily's graduation, family vacations to the beach, Sarah and Tom's 20th anniversary party. They told the story of a happy family, one that had built their life piece by piece over the years. But photographs can lie. It started slowly, the way these things often do. Jake began spending more time at the Thompson house, coming over for dinner 3 or 4 times a week. He would help Tom with yard work on weekends and sit with Sarah in the kitchen while she cooked, asking questions about her nursing career and sharing stories about his own family. Sarah found herself looking forward to these kitchen conversations more than she should. She noticed the way Jake's t-shirt stretched across his shoulders when he reached for something in the high kitchen cabinets. She caught herself watching his hands as he talked, imagining them touching her the way they touched Lily. At first, Sarah pushed these thoughts away. She reminded herself of her happy marriage and her love for Tom. But 23 years of marriage had turned their relationship into something comfortable rather than exciting. Tom worked long hours, often coming home too tired to do more than eat dinner and watch TV. Their conversations had become routine, discussions about bills, schedules, and household maintenance that barely scratched the surface of real connection. Jake was different. He showed genuine interest in Sarah's stories, remembering small details and bringing them up in later conversations. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. His attention awakened something in her that she thought had long since gone dormant. One evening, while Lily was at study group and Tom was working late, Jake stopped by to pick up a textbook Lily had forgotten. He found Sarah alone in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. Without hesitation, he rolled up his sleeves and offered to help. They worked side by side, their arms brushing occasionally as they passed dishes back and forth. The kitchen felt smaller than usual, charged with an energy Sarah couldn't ignore. When Jake complimented her grace, comparing it to Lily's, Sarah felt her cheeks flush with heat. His response about age being just a number, delivered in a low voice while his eyes held hers, marked the moment everything changed. That was the point of no return, not because anything happened, but because in that moment they both acknowledged the attraction between them. It hung in the air like smoke, invisible but impossible to ignore. The next few weeks became a dance of near misses and lingering touches. Jake found reasons to be around when Lily wasn't home. Sarah made excuses to stay in the room when he was there. Their conversations took on double meanings, loaded with possibilities neither dared to speak aloud. Sarah recognized the danger in their growing attraction. She noticed Tom's confused glances when she seemed distracted or emotional for no apparent reason. She saw Lily's occasional frowns when she caught her mother and boyfriend in what appeared to be intimate conversations. But the thrill of it all was intoxicating, making her feel alive in a way she hadn't experienced in years. The tension built until one Friday night in June. Lily was attending a friend's birthday party, and Tom had retired early with a headache. Jake arrived claiming he was there to pick up Lily later, though they both knew it was an excuse to see Sarah. They sat on the back deck, sharing wine in the summer air heavy with the scent of Sarah's gardenia bushes. After 2 glasses, their inhibitions had lowered dangerously. When Jake reached out to brush a strand of hair from Sarah's face, calling her beautiful in the evening light, she knew she should stop him. Instead, she let him kiss her. That kiss changed everything. It was passionate, hungry, forbidden, everything Sarah had imagined and more. When they finally separated, she felt dizzy with desire and guilt. The kiss opened a door that couldn't be closed. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Jake began finding more opportunities to be alone together. They met in parking lots 2 towns over, sharing heated encounters in his car. They exchanged late-night text messages that became repositories of their dangerous secrets. Sarah lived in constant fear of discovery, but the fear only added to the excitement. When she was with Jake, she felt younger, more alive than she had in years. His touch made her forget about being a wife and mother. She forgot about responsibility and morality. She forgot everything except the way he made her feel. But guilt became her constant companion. Every time she saw Lily's trusting smile or felt Tom's goodnight kiss, Sarah felt torn in two. Sleep became elusive as she spent hours staring at the ceiling, wondering how she had let things go so far. The cracks in her carefully constructed facade began to show. She became jumpy, checking her phone constantly, making up excuses to leave the house. Tom attributed her strange behavior to work stress, but Lily began to sense something wasn't right. One evening, Sarah overheard Lily expressing concerns to her best friend Katie over the phone. Her daughter's worried voice as she described her mother's odd behavior, and Jake's strange looks cut through Sarah like a knife. Yet even hearing her daughter's fears wasn't enough to make her stop. Sarah told herself she would end it soon, that she just needed a little more time. But time wasn't on her side. The affair had been going on for 2 months when Lily made the discovery. Sarah had carelessly left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while she showered. It was a basic mistake, one she would curse herself for later, but by then it would be too late. When Sarah came downstairs, she found Lily standing in the kitchen, holding the phone with trembling hands. Her daughter's face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks as she confronted her mother about the betrayal. The look of devastation in Lily's eyes would haunt Sarah forever. The next few days passed in a blur of pain and accusations. Lily retreated into herself, refusing to speak to either Sarah or Jake. She spent hours locked in her room, emerging only when necessary. Jake stopped coming to the house, though his messages to Sarah continued, pleading for meetings and conversations she knew they couldn't have. Tom noticed the tension between his wife and daughter but couldn't understand its source. When he asked about the sudden change in their household, both women deflected with excuses about stress, work pressure, and other mundane problems. But the happy family facade was cracking, and soon it would shatter completely. Sarah knew she should confess everything to Tom, but fear held her back. She dreaded losing her marriage, destroying her family, and facing the consequences of her actions. She didn't know then that her silence would lead to something far worse than divorce. As the first part of their story drew to a close, the Thompsons were like a house of cards in a growing wind, still standing, but with every card trembling, ready to collapse. Sarah Thompson stood at her kitchen window once again, but this time she wasn't watching her daughter and Jake walk hand in hand. Instead, she watched the rain fall on her carefully tended garden, knowing that the storm about to break over her family would destroy everything she had spent years building. The truth was about to come out, and when it did, it would unleash a chain of events that would end in violence and tragedy. But for now, Sarah could only wait, trapped in the prison of her own making, as the clock ticked toward disaster. 2 days after Lily discovered the affair, Tom Thompson came home early from work. The summer heat had made the construction site unsafe, forcing him to send his crew home at noon. He found Sarah sitting at their kitchen table, staring at her phone with red-rimmed eyes. 23 years of marriage had taught Tom to read his wife's expressions. He'd spent weeks watching his family fall apart, seeing the silent tears in Lily's eyes and the guilt in Sarah's face. When he demanded the truth, his voice carried the weight of a man who knew his world was about to change forever. Sarah's confession emerged slowly, each word seeming to physically pain her. The story unfolded in broken sentences, her growing attraction to Jake, the stolen kisses, the secret meetings. As she spoke, Tom's face transformed. The initial confusion in his eyes gave way to disbelief, then anger, and finally settled into something worse, a deep, cold rage that Sarah had never seen before. The revelation that it was Jake, their daughter's boyfriend, the young man who had sat at their dinner table and helped build their deck, hit Tom like a physical blow. When Sarah reached for his hand, he recoiled as if her touch burned him. The kitchen chair crashed against the tile floor as he stood abruptly, his body rigid with shock and anger. Tom's response was raw and devastating. He reminded Sarah of their 23 years together, his voice trembling as he recounted his dedication to their marriage. He spoke of the 60-hour work weeks he'd endured so she could reduce her hospital hours when Lily was young, his unwavering support when she wanted to return to school, his complete faithfulness throughout their marriage. Sarah's attempts at explanation only fueled his anger. Her insistence that the affair meant nothing, that it was a stupid and selfish mistake, seemed to enrage him further. The mention of their daughter's name, their Lily, broke something in Tom. His movements became jerky and unpredictable as he paced the kitchen, his behavior so unlike the steady, controlled man Sarah had known for over 2 decades. When Tom demanded details about the affair, each answer seemed to strike him like a physical blow. The revelation that they had met at Jake's apartment and in his car caused Tom to grip the kitchen counter, his knuckles white with tension. Without another word, he grabbed his keys and left, leaving the back door open behind him. Sarah's calls after him went unanswered as he backed out of the driveway. Tom drove aimlessly at first, his mind replaying Sarah's confession on an endless loop. Every memory of Jake in their home now felt tainted, the friendly handshakes, the offers to help around the house, the seemingly innocent smiles. Each recollection twisted like a knife in his gut, poisoned by the knowledge of betrayal. The rage built inside him like a physical presence, hot and demanding. Without conscious decision, he found himself steering toward Jake's apartment complex. The familiar route, one he'd driven several times to drop off Lily, now felt like a path to inevitable confrontation. The summer sun still hung high in the sky when Tom parked his truck in the visitor's lot, casting long shadows across the asphalt. He sat there for several minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel, wrestling with the decision before him. A rational part of his mind urged him to leave, to find a bar, get drunk, and call a lawyer in the morning. But rationality had no place in the storm of emotions that consumed him. The summer sun still hung high in the sky when Tom parked his truck in the visitor's lot, casting long shadows across the asphalt. He sat there for several minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel, wrestling with the decision before him. A rational part of his mind urged him to leave, to find a bar, get drunk, and call a lawyer in the morning. But rationality had no place in the storm of emotions that consumed him. The walk to Jake's second-floor apartment felt heavy with purpose. Each step on the metal stairs echoed like a countdown. The sound of soft music drifted from behind door as Tom knocked. When Jake opened the door wearing gym shorts and a t-shirt, his hair damp from a recent shower, his expression shifted from surprise to understanding as he recognized his visitor. Tom pushed past him into the apartment, his eyes immediately drawn to the photographs on the shelf, particularly one of Jake with Lily, their happiness now a cruel mockery. Jake's attempts to explain fell on deaf ears. His insistence that the affair was over, that both he and Sarah recognized their mistake, only served to fuel Tom's rage. The younger man's words about never meaning to hurt anyone pushed Tom over the edge. The physical confrontation erupted suddenly. Tom lunged forward, grabbing Jake's shirt and slamming him against the refrigerator. Magnets and photos clattered to the floor as the two men struggled. Jake's attempts to push Tom away proved futile against the older man's rage-fueled strength. Their struggle knocked them into the counter, sending a glass crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking glass barely registered in Tom's consciousness. His hand found a knife on the kitchen counter, an ordinary kitchen knife, the kind used to chop vegetables for dinner. Without conscious thought, he swung it. The blade caught Jake in the stomach. Both men froze in shock at the sudden turn of events. Jake's wordless gasp filled the kitchen as Tom released him, stepping back as the younger man slid to the floor. Blood spread across Jake's gray t-shirt, dark and fast, seeping between his fingers as he pressed his hands against the wound. His face had gone pale, his eyes wide with disbelief as he pleaded for help. Tom's hands shook as he called 911, his voice mechanical as he reported what he'd done. He sank to the floor, maintaining distance from Jake as he followed the operator's instructions. He watched helplessly as Jake's breathing became shallow, his movements weaker. The police arrived 7 minutes later, finding Tom sitting against the kitchen cabinet, the bloody knife on the floor beside him, Jake unconscious in a pool of blood. Tom offered no resistance as they handcuffed him. The news of the stabbing spread through their small town like wildfire. Television crews descended on their quiet street, while neighbors watched from behind curtained windows as police cars filled the Thompsons' driveway. The story proved too sensational to ignore. A respectable family man driven to violence by his wife's affair with their daughter's boyfriend. Jake survived the initial stabbing but succumbed to complications 3 days later in the hospital. His death transformed Tom from an attempted murderer to a killer, though the distinction meant little to a man already drowning in regret. Sarah and Lily fled their home to escape the media attention, taking refuge with Sarah's sister in a neighboring town. The two women barely spoke to each other. Lily couldn't look at her mother without seeing the catalyst for her father's imprisonment and her boyfriend's death. Sarah couldn't face her own reflection in the mirror. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Tom's lawyer built a defense around temporary insanity, emphasizing the extreme emotional distress of discovering his wife's infidelity. The prosecution portrayed him as a jealous husband who had committed premeditated murder. The jury ultimately found him guilty of second-degree murder. At the sentencing, Tom stood straight in his orange jumpsuit, looking decades older than his 47 years. His statement to Jake's parents expressed deep remorse, acknowledging that he didn't expect or deserve forgiveness, but promising that he would regret his actions every day for the rest of his life. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in state prison. Sarah filed for divorce while Tom awaited trial. She sold their house. No one wanted to live there anymore. The garden she had tended so carefully became overgrown, the flowers choked by weeds. Lily took a leave of absence from college, unable to continue her studies amid the scandal that had enveloped their small town. She eventually transferred to a university on the other side of the state, seeking escape from the whispers and stares that followed her. Sarah found work at a different hospital, where her story remained unknown. But she couldn't escape what she had done. Every mirror reflected the woman who had destroyed her family. Every closed eye brought visions of Jake's final moments, dying because of choices she had made. 3 lives were destroyed that summer, and countless others were damaged. The ripples of Sarah and Jake's affair spread far beyond their small circle, touching their families, their friends, their community. Years later, people in town still discuss the Thompson tragedy. They point out their old house to newcomers, sharing the story in hushed voices. It serves as a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of betrayal, about how one bad choice can spiral into destruction. Sarah Thompson lives alone now, in a small apartment in a different town. She works night shifts at the hospital, preferring the quiet solitude of darkness. She hasn't spoken to Tom since the trial. Her relationship with Lily remains strained, limited to occasional phone calls on holidays and birthdays. Every year on the anniversary of Jake's death, Sarah visits his grave. She places flowers by his headstone and sits there in silence, wondering how different things might have been if she had made better choices, if she had remembered her responsibilities as a wife and mother, if she had considered the consequences of her actions. But regret, like love, comes too late sometimes. The Thompson family's story ended not with a happily ever after, but with 3 people serving different kinds of life sentences: Tom behind bars, Sarah in her self-imposed exile, and Lily carrying the weight of her parents' choices. In the end, their tragedy serves as a reminder that the most devastating wounds often come from those closest to us, and that some mistakes can never be undone.